when the Thorny Devil lizard wraps itself in sharp, sturdy, spiked armor like a living fortress and faces off against the Inland Taipan, a snake carrying one of the most terrifying venoms in the wild. The question is, in the harsh world of nature, which species would be able to win? Will the Thorny Devil's spikes be enough to make a predator back down, or will the Inland Taipan's venom become the decisive weapon that brings victory? Let us explore this tense showdown between spiked armor and deadly venom right now. The Thorny Devil lizard is seen by the natural world as a living fortress in the heart of the Australian desert because its entire body is covered with sharp, tough spikes. Interestingly, even though they look like bones, these spikes are mainly made of keratin, a biological material found in the nails and horns of many animals. This armor stretches from head to tail, turning the Thorny Devil into a very troublesome meal in the eyes of many predators. One of the most unique features of this species is the false head structure located behind the neck. This is a spiked mass of tissue that helps draw attention away from the real head. Thanks to this, vital parts such as the brain, eyes, and central nervous system are better protected. For such a small creature living in such a harsh environment, this mechanism shows that the Thorny Devil is truly a master of defense. Along with its spiked armor, the Thorny Devil lizard also has a very special survival mechanism. It can channel water through its skin. Across at the surface of its body, there are countless tiny grooves between its scales, working like a natural capillary system. When moisture, dew, or water comes into contact with the skin, that water can gradually be guided toward the mouth. In the dry desert, this is an extremely valuable survival advantage. The Thorny Devil also has the ability to puff up its body, making its shape look bulkier and turning its spikes into an even denser barrier. This mechanism helps increase its defensive power, especially against predators with sharp fangs. Combined with colors that closely resemble sand and dry soil, this lizard is both hard to detect and very difficult to deal with. The Thorny Devil's diet is also very unusual because it is almost entirely focused on ants. This is a tiny, low-energy food source, so to stay alive, this lizard has to consume a very large number of them every day. This creates a lifestyle that is very different from many other predatory reptiles. The Thorny Devil does not need strength to take down large prey, and it does not need speed to chase anything down. It survives by conserving energy and taking advantage of a small but stable food source in a dry environment. But this very diet also puts it at a disadvantage. Because it spends so much time on the ground searching for ants, a small creature like the Thorny Devil needs a truly effective layer of protection. That is why its spiked armor is not just a strange-looking feature. It is an important part of its survival strategy, helping the Thorny Devil keep feeding, stay alive, and remain safe in the desert, where just one careless moment can come at a very high cost. If the Thorny Devil is a keratin fortress in the desert, then the Inland Taipan represents the power of venom. This snake mainly lives in the dry inland regions of Australia. Its familiar habitat includes cracked soil plains, dry clay areas, and remote places far from humans, where temperatures can change drastically and water is always limited. What makes the Inland Taipan most famous is its venom. It is often considered one of the most venomous land snakes in the world. That power comes from a complex mixture of toxins that affect multiple biological systems at the same time. The Inland Taipan's venom contains components that affect the nervous system, toxins that damage muscle tissue, and enzymes that help the toxins spread. This layered combination makes it a highly effective predator in the wild. However, the Inland Taipan's venom mainly evolved to deal with small, warm-blooded mammals, especially rats and mice. These are an important food source for it in inland Australia, and they are also why this snake is seen as a very specialized hunter. Another interesting feature is its ability to change color with the seasons. During colder periods, the Inland Taipan's body is usually darker, so it can absorb heat more effectively. When the weather becomes hotter, its color tends to become lighter, helping reduce the amount of heat it absorbs. For a reptile that depends heavily on outside temperatures, this change gives it a clear survival advantage. In terms of body shape, the Inland Taipan has a long, slender, flexible body, well suited to dry, cracked ground and narrow spaces. This body helps it adapt to a complicated habitat while also allowing it to remain hidden in the wild. Although it is famous for its venom, the Inland Taipan actually has a fairly secretive lifestyle in the wild. It rarely appears around humans, is usually associated with areas far from residential zones, and depends heavily on the presence of its natural prey. Another important detail is the structure of its fangs. The Inland Taipan belongs to the cobra family, with fixed fangs at the front of the upper jaw. These fangs are relatively short compared with some other groups of snakes, but they are effective enough for familiar prey such as rats, mice, and small mammals. So the Inland Taipan is remarkable not only for its extremely powerful venom, but also for its combination of sharp senses, desert adaptation, and a very specialized hunting style. But when the Inland Taipan is placed beside the Thorny Devil, the confrontation becomes a test between venom and spiked armor. The Inland Taipan has the stronger offense, but that advantage is only truly dangerous if it can get past the Thorny Devil's special defenses. In reality, if an Inland Taipan and a Thorny Devil lizard came face to face, the most reasonable scenario would not be a dramatic chase, but a quiet struggle between venom and defense. One side has an extremely powerful chemical weapon, while the other is covered in a system of hard spikes that makes any attempt to approach it risky. At first, the advantage still seems to favor the Inland Taipan. It is the predator, it has dangerous venom, and it can apply much greater pressure. But the problem appears at the most important point. Venom only truly works when it can reach soft tissue. Against a body covered in spikes like the Thorny Devil's, that advantage is no longer as easy to use as it is against its usual prey. The longer the confrontation lasts, the more difficult the situation becomes for the predator. The Thorny Devil does not need a powerful counterattack because its defense alone makes it inefficient to deal with. The false head structure also makes the lizard's most important body area harder to identify clearly, reducing the snake's advantage in accuracy. At this point, the deciding factor is no longer how powerful the Inland Taipan is, but whether this hunt is worth continuing at all. The Thorny Devil is small and offers little nutritional value, while its spikes create a risk of injury for the predator. For a species that relies on venom, the jaws and fangs are essential survival weapons, so risking them for a target with such limited reward is clearly not a wise choice. So the most reasonable ending to this encounter is that the Inland Taipan ignores the target and looks for more suitable prey. This is not a defeat for the snake. It is a practical survival decision, saving energy, venom, and hunting ability for better opportunities. For the Thorny Devil, however, that is a victory in its own unique way. It does not win through strength, and it does not need to overpower its opponent. It survives by turning its own body into a barrier and by simply not being worth choosing. And that is exactly what makes this confrontation so special. In the natural world, every species has its own path to survival. Some species are born to become fearsome predators, while others survive by quietly becoming a challenge that is not worth taking on. With the Thorny Devil and the Inland Taipan, nature shows us that victory does not always belong to the one with the stronger weapon, because sometimes it belongs to the one that makes the fight not worth starting in the first place. Which survival strategy impressed you more? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the amazing world of animals.